Parmenides revealed, is change just an illusion? Imagine a world where nothing changes, ever. Sounds crazy, right? That's exactly what Parmenides, an ancient Greek philosopher, argued 2,500 years ago. Welcome to episode 15 of our 100-part philosophy journey, where we dive into Parmenides and his radical idea that reality is unchanging and change is just an illusion. Ready to have your mind blown? Let's go. Hey everyone, I'm your guide through this epic exploration of ancient Greek philosophy, and today we're diving into the fascinating world of Parmenides, a thinker who turned everything upside down by saying reality is one, eternal, and unchanging. Last episode, we explored Heraclitus, who said everything flows and change is the essence of reality. Parmenides? He's the total opposite. He argued that change doesn't exist, and what we think is real might just be a trick of our senses. So grab a seat, maybe a snack, and let's unpack Parmenides' mind-bending philosophy of being and why it still matters today. Let's travel back to around 500 BCE in Aelia, a Greek colony in what's now southern Italy. Parmenides was a big deal in his time, founding the Eleatic school of philosophy. Unlike Heraclitus, who saw the world as a constant flow, Parmenides said reality, what he called being, is one, unchanging and eternal. His ideas were so radical that they challenged how people understood the world, and they still spark debates among philosophers today. So, what's the deal with Parmenides? Let's break it down. Parmenides' core idea is simple but wild. What exists, exists, and what doesn't exist, doesn't. Sounds obvious, right? But here's the kicker. He said that being is all there is. Being is reality itself, unchanging, indivisible, and eternal. Nothing comes into being, and nothing passes away. Change, motion, even time? They're all illusions, according to Parmenides. To him, reality is like a perfect, unchanging sphere, complete, whole, and timeless. Here's an example to wrap your head around this. Look at this table in front of me. You might think it's changing, getting older, collecting dust, maybe even breaking down over time. Parmenides would say, nope, that's just your senses fooling you. To him, the table, as part of being, is eternal and unchanging at its core. The changes we see, aging, movement, decay, are just appearances, not reality. It's like saying the world we experience is a dream, and the real truth is something deeper. Now you might be thinking, how can change not exist? I see things changing every day. Parmenides would argue that our senses are unreliable. He trusted reason over perception, saying that logic leads us to the truth, not our eyes or ears. His famous poem, On Nature, lays out his philosophy in two parts, the way of truth and the way of opinion. The way of truth is where he argues that being is eternal and unchanging, while the way of opinion explains why we think we see change. It's just our senses misleading us. Let's dive into the way of truth. Parmenides starts with a bold claim. What is and what is not cannot be. This means non-existence isn't possible. Something can't come from nothing, and something that exists can't just vanish. Think about it. If something exists now, it can't have come from nothing, because nothing isn't a thing. And if it exists, it can't become nothing, because non-existence doesn't exist. So reality, being, must be eternal, with no beginning or end. This leads to Parmenides' big conclusion. Reality is one. There's no division, no parts, no change. Why? Because if reality had parts or changed, there'd have to be some non-being, separating or causing those changes. And Parmenides says non-being can't exist. It's like saying the universe is one giant, unchanging block of reality. No birth, no death, no motion, just pure, timeless being. Okay, let's slow down. This is heavy stuff, and even ancient Greeks found it hard to swallow. Parmenides' ideas sound like they're from a sci-fi movie, but he backed them up with logic. He said reason shows us that change implies contradictions. For example, if something changes, it goes from being to not being or vice versa. But since not being isn't possible, change can't happen. It's a brain twister, but Parmenides was all about trusting logic over what we see or feel. Now, let's talk about the way of opinion. This is where Parmenides explains why we think the world is full of change and variety. He says our senses trick us into seeing a world of objects, colors, and motion. But this is just an illusion, a flawed way of perceiving reality. For Parmenides, the real world is beyond what we see or touch. It's like he's saying we're stuck in a cosmic VR headset, and the truth is outside the simulation. To make this clearer, think about a sunset. You see the sun moving across the sky, right? Parmenides would say that's just your senses talking. In reality, there's no motion. Being doesn't move or change. The sun, the sky, you, everything is part of one eternal reality. This idea was so radical that it challenged other philosophers, like Heraclitus, who said change is everything. Parmenides basically said, Heraclitus, you're dreaming. Let's bring this to our world. Why does Parmenides matter today? His ideas force us to question what we take for granted. We live in a world where change seems obvious. New tech, new seasons, new you after a haircut. But Parmenides asks, what if reality is deeper than that? What if there's a timeless truth beneath the chaos? His philosophy pushes us to trust reason over appearances, which is huge in a world full of misleading ads, fake news, and filtered Instagram posts. Parmenides also influenced science and philosophy big time. His idea of a single unchanging reality inspired later thinkers like Plato, who imagined a world of perfect forms beyond our senses. Even modern physics, with concepts like the block universe theory, where time is just another dimension, echoes Parmenides' view that change might not be as real as we think. Ever heard of Einstein's relativity? It's got a Parmenidean vibe, suggesting the universe might be one big, timeless whole. But let's be real. Parmenides' ideas are tough to live by. If change is an illusion, how do we deal with everyday life? If nothing comes or goes, what about birth, death, or even grabbing a coffee? Parmenides would say those are just appearances, but he didn't deny the practical world entirely. His way of opinion shows he knew we have to navigate this illusory world, even if the ultimate truth is unchanging being. Let's talk about his poem for a sec on nature, is written like an epic journey, where a goddess guides Parmenides to truth. It's poetic, almost mystical, which makes sense for a guy trying to describe something as wild as unchanging reality. He didn't just argue his point, he wrapped it in vivid imagery like a philosopher-poet. His style inspired later thinkers, and his poem is one of the few surviving bits of his work, making it a treasure for philosophy nerds. Now, Parmenides wasn't without critics. Heraclitus, who we covered last episode, would have rolled his eyes at Parmenides' unchanging reality. Heraclitus said everything flows, while Parmenides said nothing does. This clash between change and permanence is one of the biggest debates in philosophy, and we'll see it play out in future episodes with thinkers like Plato and Aristotle. Other critics said Parmenides' ideas were too abstract. How can you live in a world where nothing changes? But that's what makes him so fascinating. He pushes us to think beyond the obvious. Let's get practical. Parmenides' philosophy can change how you see the world. Next time you're stressed about change, a new job, a move, a global shift, think like Parmenides. What if there's a deeper, unchanging truth behind it all? Maybe your worries are just appearances, and reality is more stable than you think. His ideas can help you step back, question your perceptions, and find calm in a chaotic world. That's it for episode 15. We've explored Parmenides, the philosopher who said reality is one unchanging being and change is an illusion. If you're loving this dive into ancient Greek philosophy, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Drop a comment. Do you think change is real? Or is Parmenides onto something with his unchanging reality? Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in episode 16, where we'll explore more ancient Greek wisdom with the next big thinker.